Good. Sorry. Before the meeting is called to order, I would like to point out a few house rules to assist council members, staff, and members of the public to successfully participate in this meeting. Council members, your microphone is live, so please keep your microphones on mute until you wish to speak. For tonight's meeting, we are using Zoom to host the City Council regular meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, chat and raise hand. Please use chat only to report technical issues such as being unable to hear a council member speaking. Please use raise hand to be recognized by the mayor and enabled to speak to the council. To comment under oral communication or any agenda item, you are allowed 3 minutes to speak per agenda item. Emails limited to 350 words can also be submitted to the city clerk and it will be read into the record. This word limit is set to adhere to the typical 3-minute time allowance. Only attendees using the Zoom application can use the raise hand option to comment. Participants calling in from a telephone will only be able to listen and cannot provide feedback or public comment. Lastly, because we are all not in the same room, all votes at this meeting will be taken by roll call.
Great, thank you. The regular meeting of the Monte Sereno City Council for Tuesday, April 6, 2021 is called to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lawler.
Present.
Councilmember Mekachek.
Present.
Councilmember Turner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Present.
And Mayor Luthold.
Present.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you. City Manager, any changes to the orders of the day?
None from staff, Mayor.
All right. Then let's go ahead and move to our Red Cross presentation and proclamation. And I believe that we have a presentation by Mr. Ken Toren of the Red Cross. If we can bring Mr. Toren up, and then we'll have his presentation, and then I will move to the official proclamation.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
For some reason, my video is not working, but I just want to first thank the members of the Monte Sereno Council. Thanks, Steve, Michelle, and the entire Monte Sereno staff members for recognizing us tonight. Most proud to say that our workforce, 90% of which are volunteers, help millions of people, especially during local home fires, wildfires, as well as national hurricanes and the COVID-19 pandemic. That's 90% of our workforce is volunteers, people who help us prepare, respond, and recover from major disasters and respond to 2 to 3 home fires a week, every week in our county. These are the people who give blood, support blood drives, those who are recovered COVID patients who donated antibody convalescent plasma, and African-American donors who gave blood to support sickle cell patients. These are the people who help with first aid, CPR, AED classes for individuals, schools, and hospitals. And these are the people who support our brave members of the armed forces and their families, both enlisted and post-service. And these are the people who support international efforts with other global Red Cross organizations. And these are the people who will help us forge ahead and support Red Cross to address important issues like climate change and how we respond to build resiliency in our communities locally and nationally and help alleviate human suffering. I'm proud to tell you that we have dozens of some of the best Silicon Valley volunteers from Monte Sereno and Los Gatos, and 3 board members and myself live in the local area. We also recognize our many generous donors and proud that 90 cents of every dollar we spend is invested in humanitarian services to those in need, making American Red Cross one of the most responsible organizations in the US. And finally, as we look forward, we look back and share with you that close to 60 years ago, there were 6 or 7 Red Cross offices that started in Santa Clara County, and that the Monte Sereno West Valley office was the very first one. This Red Cross office was located at the Monte Sereno City Hall at Highway 9 and Rose Avenue. And I'm told that the official Red Cross staff car was a green 1965 Chevy wagon. So we cherish the past, we live for today, and have hope for tomorrow. Be well, and thanks again for your support and recognition tonight.
Thank you very much. So at this time, Monte Sereno would like to present our official proclamation to the American Red Cross regarding American Red Cross Month for 2021. More than 139 years ago, the American Red Cross was established as a humanitarian organization guided by 7 fundamental principles, including humanity, impartiality, and independence, to provide services to those in need, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or citizenship status. Today, the American Red Cross is one of the largest humanitarian organizations in the world, and it delivers its mission every day to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Every year, the American Red Cross responds to an average of more than 64,000 disasters across the country, from small home fires to local wildfires to devastating massive disasters. Hundreds of thousands of American Red Cross volunteers provide around-the-clock shelter for disaster victims, serve millions of meals and snacks with partners, and distribute millions of relief items. During the trying times of the coronavirus pandemic, the Red Cross continues to work closely with public health officials to deliver our services safely and to coordinate our efforts with government agencies and partners. The American Red Cross is also testing all blood, platelet, and plasma donations for COVID-19 antibodies. As part of that effort, the plasma from whole blood donors that test positive for COVID-19 antibodies may now help current coronavirus patients in need of convalescent plasma transfusions. The Red Cross is committed to helping others in meaningful ways during this pandemic. In Santa Clara County, the Red Cross has a long history of helping the neighbors in need. From July to December 2020, 2,000 local volunteers assisted with disasters and helped save lives throughout the home fire campaign. The Red Cross continues its mission to shelter, feed, and provide emotional support to the victims of disasters, supplying 40% of the nation's blood, teaching skills that prepare us and save lives, and offering international humanitarian aid and support to the military members and their families. The Red Cross workforce, 90% of which is volunteers, help millions of people. And thanks to the generous donor, 90 cents of every dollar is spent providing humanitarian services to those needs. March is Red Cross Month, which is a special time to recognize and thank the Red Cross volunteers and donors who gave of their time and resources to help members of the community. The Red Cross depends on those local heroes to develop, help, and hope during disaster, and applaud those who assist their neighbors when they need a helping hand. We formally dedicate the month of March to all of those that support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Our community depends on the Red Cross, which relies on volunteers and the generosity of the public to perform its mission. Now, therefore, I, Sean Luthold, Mayor of Monte Sereno, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of Monte Sereno and California, do hereby formally proclaim March 2021 as Red Cross Month. I encourage all Americans to support this organization and its noble humanitarian mission. And I'd like to point out, although we're offering this proclamation belatedly, we hope that everyone will support the Red Cross every month of the year. So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
present this proclamation formally.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Okay, moving now to the oral communications section of our meeting. This is the time that members of the public can speak to matters which are not on the agenda. If anyone has anything they wish to bring to the council's attention that is not one of the agenda matters, please raise your hand and we will recognize you in turn. If you're wishing to speak to something which is on tonight's agenda, please wait until those matters come up. So it looks like we have one hand raised from a Tracy and Amir Hadid. We will recognize you and you will have 3 minutes. When you're ready.
Okay. It's echoing. We are Tracy and Amir Hadid, and we live at 1872 Withy Road. We built this house over 30 years ago to enjoy the trees and valley views. 3 weeks ago, without notice, PG&E added an ugly brown 15-foot pole with a span of 10 foot with wires hanging from it to an existing grey wooden pole directly in front of our property. It looks like the temporary poles on construction sites and resembles a giant cross, particularly at night. This eyesore dominates the view from every room in our home. Our photos submitted to the city manager and planner do not adequately convey how oppressive this pole's appearance is, and we welcome the council members to come and see for themselves. The PG&E employees told us it was to assist Comcast in adding more service and has nothing to do with electrical service or site safety or fire mitigation. It does not look stable, and in an area prone to heavy gusts of wind and high fire risk, it is a safety hazard. In addition, this has impacted our pleasure of our home and the value of our property greatly. We have contacted PG&E customer service repeatedly, and they have not called us back in 3 weeks, even after ensuring us each time they would. We would appreciate and need the city's help to resolve this matter with an unresponsive PG&E. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council during oral communication, please raise your hand at this time. Seeing none, we will progress to written communications. Ms. Radcliffe, have we had any written communications that have not been added to the packet tonight?
No, we do not.
All right. Moving now to the consent calendar. Do we have any members of council wishing to pull any matters from the consent calendar? If so, please raise your hand and we will do so. If you have just brief questions for staff, raise your hand and we'll address those to staff. If we don't have any questions, do we have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Turner with a second from Mayor Pro Tem Elahi. Councilmember Makachuk,
Aye.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Councilmember Turner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi,
Yes.
and Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
Great, thank you. We will now open the first public hearing. And this is regarding consideration of a 2-lot tentative map parcel for 18061 Saratoga-Los Gatos Road, adoption of a mitigated negative declaration, and adoption of a mitigated monitoring and reporting program pursuant to CEQA. Do we have a staff report and recommendation on this?
Mayor, Ms. Hamilton will be delivering the staff report this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I trust you can hear me.
Yes.
It's my pleasure to be before you this evening to present a 2-lot subdivision at 18061 Saratoga-Los Gatos Road. As been presented in the staff report, this is an approximately 0.5 acre site that's currently developed with a single home. The proposed project is a subdivision of 2 lots with a single 20-foot wide driveway, access shared by the 2 lots at the front, and then further serving the rear lot. As with the subdivision to the west of the site, a mitigated negative declaration was completed for the project and was circulated for the requisite 30 days, beginning January 25th through February 24th. Staff received 1 comment during the review period, that comment being from Caltrans. They did not bring up any environmental issues, and as is typical, it is conditioned in the project and the resolution before council that the applicant is required to get an encroachment permit prior to any development of the site. The city did engage a consultant, M Group, to prepare the environmental analysis and documentation. And with us tonight is Ranu Agarwal with the M Group to answer any questions should you have them on the CEQA documents. As I addressed in the staff report, the proposed subdivision is consistent with the city's applicable general plan goals and policies. It complies with the applicable subdivision and zoning regulations. And as with the recent subdivision to the west, this proposal is also subject to the same height limitations for subdivision along the scenic corridor, as well as subject to architectural review of the new homes by City Council. Any proposed development will go with a site development permit to the Site and Architectural Commission for review and recommendation to the City Council. It will be the City Council that will have final approval over that site development permit. The actions before you tonight are threefold. First would be to consider the mitigated negative declaration for the project and adopt a resolution approving the same. Second would be to consider the mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the project and adopt a resolution approving the same. And then your final action would be to adopt a resolution approving the tentative parcel map with the standard and special conditions, including the additional energy dissipator on parcel 2 in the northwestern area. This was an issue that was proposed by the applicant's representative in response to some concern raised relative to the drainage, and the Site and Architectural Commission is recommending to the council that you approve the subdivision as proposed with the standard and this special condition. With that, I am here to answer any questions. And as I said, if you have any questions related to the environmental analysis, our consultant is available. Thank you.
Thank you. Now will be the time for city council members to ask any basic and clarifying questions of staff. Then we will open this for public discussion and then return to city council for further discussion and eventually votes. So city council, anyone with questions regarding any of the three action items for tonight? Mr. Mekachek, was that a hand?
Yes, it was. So the drawings, the renderings that are in the package, they are not what we're approving. We're merely approving the subdivision, is the tentative map. Is that correct? And those are merely illustrative of what could be there. Is that correct?
That is correct. Any development will come back through the review process via a site development permit, which again will go before Site and Architectural Commission for their review and recommendation to City Council.
Thank you.
And that will happen after the final map process.
As a follow-on question, how does this impact, if any, our housing requirements and the numbers that the state is asking us to meet?
These are going to be market rate homes, so it does not play into the RENA numbers. We've already met any above market rate for that. Unless it comes through under the next cycle, which is not for about 2 years.
All right, and actually, just to clarify that, it's when something qualifies for RENA numbers, is that based on final inspection, or is that based on the initial approval of the plans for construction plans?
It's going to be when they're available for move-in, pretty much. I mean, they now track it all the way through. However, it's really going to be, I think, when you give occupancy to them.
Okay, so this is borderline as to whether it might fall in that if this project goes forward.
Correct.
Okay, Councilmember Elahi.
Yeah, I just had a question on one of the public comments had to do with whether this site and architecture meeting was probably noticed or not. If you could clarify that. I don't know.
Yes,
Did you see
it
that email?
was. We, the first noticing, actually, this project was posted on the city's pending projects list within a week after it came in. It was filed on September 3rd. Because of my workload and all of the other efforts, and trying to make sure that we, get projects through, I anticipated needing an additional meeting to accommodate projects, not only this one, but another one, which actually didn't end up going to this meeting. But the first noticing that happened was on, I think, January 24th, or the notices went out on the 25th to residents within a 500, residents and property owners within a 500-foot radius of the site to let them know of the city's intent to adopt a mitigated negative declaration on the project. The next noticing was done for the site and architectural meeting. Notices went out March 5th. The agenda was posted via the Granicus system, which we've always used up until our meeting for tomorrow night. And the 3 requisite notices were posted around the city again on March 5th, more than 10 days prior to that public hearing. The most recent notice for this hearing was sent out on March 26th and posted via the new iCompass system. So we did do all the noticing that's required, as I stated.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think to supplement Jeannie's response, it sounds like the transition between Granicus and iCompass caused some confusion for folks when all of a sudden the agenda was populated into the new agenda management software.
But you're saying that it was proper legal notice was followed throughout?
Correct.
All right. Any other questions before we open for public comment? Seeing none, we will now open the public comment portion of the public hearing. If you are interested in speaking tonight, please raise your hand and we will prepare to recognize you in the order you come up on our screens. So it looks like we have a M. Stryker as first to recognize. And
hi, good evening. My name is Mark Stryker, my wife Robin, and I live on Arley Drive, so we're neighbors of the property under discussion. I'll just comment just because of the prior topic. I looked and looked 10 different ways for how to attend the site and architecture meeting and had to give up. Links, when you find an agenda on the website and you can't click it and can't open it, you think you found it, and yet it's not sufficient to get into the meeting. So I'll just comment that as tech savvy as I am, I still struggled for the last meeting. This one was easier. Thank you. So our concern, so first of all, I would like to commend Human and Tony for all the work that they've done. I think that they've taken into account the neighbors quite a bit. We especially appreciate the fact that they're going to be leaving all the trees at the bottom of the property and things like that. The concerns we had were about the fence, which the Site and Architecture Committee, I think, stipulated or asked at least that the fence get built before construction start between our properties, and the drainage is the main one. So that's what I was going to ask. My concern is that we've done things on our property to protect our property from the runoff. And even then, when it's really storming, I'm out there with sandbags, and I want to make sure that that will stay an infrequent occurrence with this new drainage, with the dissipators and things like that, that no additional water is expected to arrive on our property, which is we're basically at the bottom of the bottom, right? We're bottom when you look south to north, we're bottom when you look west to east. So we're at that lowest corner and expect the most runoff from the property. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have.
There was a question there, right? I'm hoping somebody on the.
Yes, the questions have been noted, and council members may follow up on your questions for you as opposed to having a back and forth.
Thank you.
So thank you. Moving now to next up, Tony Jeans.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm hoping I'm allowed 5 minutes. Is that correct?
As representative of the applicant, if that's how you choose to spend your time, yes.
So yes, and would it be possible for me to share my screen?
We will work to get that queued up.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
I am going to go quickly through the plans. As it was pointed out, what we are not approving today are the houses, but when I am asked to design, in this case, a subdivision, one of the things I try and work out is how are the houses going to be placed and how will that impact the lot, the neighbors, the trees, the drainage, etc. So this front actually shows quite well how the front from Los Gatos Saratoga Road, which is here, would appear. And you would enter a single gate to both properties. This would be the driveway that would be shared between to get to the rear property. And then again, looking at it aerially from the side, you can see there's plenty of separation between the homes. And you should see that I've tried to keep the trees at the rear and get as much foliage to remain as possible. So if I go, the next one is simply the existing lot. You know, there is one house there. And as you can see, it slopes all to Mr. Stryker's house, which is here, and his neighbor, Mr. Tam. So there's a lot of water runoff that goes in this direction. This is the proposed site plan looking down on it. And one of the things that we've tried to do is we've tried to take everything from this line here in the lot and cause it to drain forward, so we have less drainage going back to the people on Arley who have expressed concern. And we've also tried to have as much separation at the rear here. This is the setback line that we're required to keep, so we're trying to keep the house further away. That gives more of an opportunity for the water to infiltrate. I'm going to skip this one here. It's the tentative map. I'm going to look at an element here, which is called an energy dissipator. So the water that is coming from this part of the lot is at the moment directed to this energy dissipator, which infiltrates a large quantity of the water into the ground, but any overflow will sheet flow, not channel flow across, and in this case towards Mr. Stryker's property. So one of the things that we came up with at the site and architecture hearing was that we would put not one 24-foot long energy dissipator, but we would do two 16-foot dissipators, one each side and split it more evenly so that the runoff is shared across the entire property line and not focused on Mr. Stryker's property. And I think that would be a good way to go. The combination of taking most of the water to the front and then splitting what is left to the back is something that we would ask you to make an additional condition of approval. The rest, these were just designs that we were looking towards. I did have a September 11th letter, which never made it into the packet because it was 7 months ago, but it was still our original letter of justification and what we were trying to do. And I think I've clarified quite well what we were trying to achieve. So I'll skip this letter here. The very last letter that is in the packet is the supplemental comments. They address a couple of things: drainage, which I've already gone over with you, property line fencing. The two neighbors at the rear and one at the side are very interested in what is going to happen at the site and architecture hearing tomorrow, when the proposal for a potentially up to 8-foot fence will be considered. They are in support of it, as are we, and we will wait to see the outcome of that hearing before we propose our fence. But we would be proposing at least a 7-foot fence at the rear and side property line. Again, more on what we've tried to achieve at the front. There is a 6-foot wooden fence across the front of the property. We would like to keep a 6-foot barrier, but we're going to update it into a stucco and stone wall, a stucco wall with stone columns on it. If you were to go to the very front of the front sheet, you can see the front stone and stucco wall hidden by California native trees, which we're proposing to put along the front. And that will come up more as we go through site and architecture. I'm surprised to hear that the actual design of the houses has to come back to the council for approval. This project has already been going on for 9 months. If there were any way to have the site and architecture committee approve it, that would save a month. We have been held up, obviously, because we were required to do an environmental review, which took 4 months, and determined that there were no environmental issues. Anyway, that said, I think I've used my 5 minutes. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I can answer them.
Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you. That explains why Mr. Jeans didn't hear me telling him that his time was up, but I'm glad he noted. Okay, thank you. Please stand by, Mr. Jeans, in case there are additional questions. And if there are other members of the public who wish to speak tonight on this subject, please raise your hands. And if there are none, we will turn this back now to council discussion. We'll close public comment at this time, and let's open it to council discussion and any further questions you have. Ms. Lawler.
I have a quick question for Ms. Hamilton. So the Site and Architecture Site and Architecture Commission recommended 2 conditions on approving the tentative parcel map. We're going to talk about that. Obviously, one of them is about the dissipators, which sounds like a great idea, and the other one was about a fence and to working with the adjacent neighbors to install good neighbor fencing. I wanted to know, you had mentioned in your report that that we didn't need to add that condition, and I just wanted you to clarify that. I'm wondering if this is something that, I mean, why couldn't it be included as a good neighbor kind of thing? And could you explain Civil Code Section 841, or could Mr. Rudin? Thank you.
Hi, folks. I think you probably want me to answer that question. With respect to that, the condition proposed, I think that the council likely can require fencing. The problem with the Site and Architecture Commission's recommendation is that it's a little bit too vague to be enforceable. If you want to condition a specific kind of fence as a condition of approval to mitigate privacy impacts, potentially that would be workable. But just a general promise to work together is a little hard to enforce. Additionally, under state law and under the city's code, any person is entitled as of right to put up a privacy fence under the present code that's at least 6 feet tall. So if a neighbor is concerned about potential privacy impacts related to the impact of somebody else's project, they can put up a privacy fence. If they can't reach an agreement about funding the fence, state law governs that and says that if you put a fence on the fence line between two properties, it is presumed by law to benefit both properties, and one neighbor can ask the other neighbor to pay for half. So, because there's already a process to work and a background of state law to work out the good neighbor fencing issue, I did not think that it was necessary to have a condition of approval on that subject. At least not one that would say, please work together.
All right, thanks. So it's unenforceable and it's redundant. So it's pretty much assumed. It sounds like they work well together anyway. So thank you.
All right. Anything further, Ms. Lawler? Okay. Councilmember Turner.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the drainage. Tony Jeans actually presented in his drawing that he put drainage on one side of the property and that he was going to put something else on the other side of the property. So I wanted to know when that is going to be changed in his drawings, and how do we keep track of the fact that this is being done throughout the construction?
This is City Planner Hamilton. That is a condition in the resolution before you. That will also be required to be represented through the final map process. And then when they come in for improvement plans or private development plans, it will be noted then, and just through all the different permitting requirements, which is why we have it as a condition in the tentative map, so that we can get it in as the project goes through the process.
Okay, and I have another question about the trees. Initially, you had something in there that you were going to remove 11 trees. Is that still true? And will that be looked at when we're building the house rather than the subdivision split?
Again, the disposition of removal of any of the trees will have to go through a tree removal permit also. Mm-hmm. So typically, at the tentative map stage, we require that they identify what may or may not be removed. And then again, until the development comes through and the approvals for that are really tied down, and the final disposition of trees is, at that point, we'll be looking at it through a tree removal permit, again, through a public hearing, again, in front of Site and Architecture recommending to council. And the reason this is going to City Council is because of the subdivision ordinance in the city does place architectural control in the hands of the council for any subdivision along a scenic corridor. So recognizing Mr. Jean's request, unfortunately, that's a code requirement. And just as the adjacent subdivision, any development, site and architectural approvals needed for that will go through Site and Architecture and on to council. So will this project.
Okay, thank you.
Any further council questions? While they're thinking about that, I have one. I wanted to follow up and just to clarify, Mr. Jeans referred to 2 energy dissipators spreading across the whole back side of the property as opposed to the one that was initially pictured. Does the resolution tonight with the proposed conditions refer specifically to the 2 energy dissipators as he's described, or do we need to clarify that at all?
The resolution that's before you on page 7, condition number 21, applicant shall modify the drainage plan for parcel 2 to include an additional energy dissipator on the northwestern portion of the parcel. Drainage and stormwater detention locations will be confirmed and verified by the city engineer for adequate flood control prior to final map approval. So we've included that as a condition in the resolution before you.
Great, thank you. And I'm assuming that the runoff provisions that we have standard runoff control provisions during construction that will be normal conditions of any construction that's going to occur on the property. Is that right?
That's correct. They have to do a stormwater pollution, a SWIP. I call it a SWIP. I don't forget what it stands for, but yes, they're going to have to control runoff not only to adjacent properties, but onto the rights of way.
Great. And then the next question that I had, looking at the tentative map, it does appear that a large circle turnaround is included. Is that something that required fire department clearance or has been built to standards for fire department access to the back lot there?
The plans were forwarded to the fire department. My understanding is Mr. Jeans has been working with them also. But again, when this finally comes through for development, it will be forwarded to them once again. It is required, and they will have final approval relative to their ability to access that rear parcel via the turnaround, via the driveway and turnaround.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, should we be taking these action items in order, taking 3 separate actions, or Sergio, Mr. Rudin, do you think we should take a single vote for all 3, the mitigated negative deck, the MMRP, and the tentative map with the conditions?
No, I recommend that you do actually take 3 separate actions, and that is because CEQA specifically requires that you first consider the environmental impacts of a project before you take action to approve it. So we had staff have prepared 2 separate resolutions on the environmental documents. One for the council to adopt the mitigated negative declaration for the project, and a second resolution to apply the mitigation monitoring reporting program for the project. And then the third resolution would actually adopt or approve the tentative map subject to all of the conditions that have been discussed, including the city's standard conditions for insurance, indemnity, verification of improvements in accordance with the tentative map, and with that additional special condition related to the energy dissipator as was discussed.
All right. Thank you. And one more question occurred to me before we go and look for motions and seconds on this is there any time limit between the approval of a tentative map and the requirement that it be completed and taken to final?
Yes. That is something that is actually governed by the Subdivision Map Act. There's typically a build out period. If you give me about a minute, I can find out exactly what that is.
Great, thank you.
So the typical standard is a tentative map expires unless the person proceeds to get approval of final map within 24 months, unless that is extended in accordance with provisions in state law and local ordinance. So typically they would need to be moving along quickly to complete all of the tentative map conditions.
All right, thank you. All right, do we have a motion to adopt the mitigated negative declaration?
So moved.
A second.
I have a first from a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Elahi and a second with Councilmember Turner. Councilmember Makachek.
And before we proceed, what was the motion on the record?
This is the motion to adopt the mitigated negative declaration.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Makachek.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Yes.
Councilmember Lawler.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yes.
Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and now turning to the adoption of the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Do we have a motion to adopt that?
So moved.
Second.
Have Mayor Pro Tem Elahi with the motion and Councilmember Turner with the second. Councilmember Turner.
Yes.
Councilmember Makachek.
Aye.
Councilmember Lawler.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yes.
And Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
All right, and now turning to the third item related to this matter, that is the adoption of the tentative map with the conditions stated.
I make the motion.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Makachek with the second by Councilmember Lawler. Councilmember Lawler.
Yes.
Councilmember Makachek.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yes.
And Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. And I want to say thank you to Mr. Jeans and the applicant for working closely with the neighbors. We'd love to see that spirit of working together continue, especially with concerns about the drainage and the fence. So look forward to those being non-issues here before council going forward. Hopefully we won't be hearing of any problems. So thank you very much. Moving now to new business. The first item of new business is to consider a letter opposing AB 377 on behalf of the city of Monte Sereno. Do we have a staff report on this?
Hello, Mayor. This evening we have Sheila Tucker she is the manager of the West Valley Clean Water Program. She will be available to answer your questions.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead then, if we're not going to make any further formal presentation on that, let's open this to public comment. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak regarding the AB 377 matter? If so, please raise your hands and be recognized. Seeing none, we will close public comment and turn now to council questions and comments regarding this matter. Ms. Lawler.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this was a really well-drafted letter and very thoughtful. So thank you for drafting this. And anytime the state tries to take control of something, it's always a little bit cringeworthy. So I appreciate this. Thank you.
All right. Any other council questions, comments?
Was there going to be a presentation by somebody on this bill? What it does, what it says, what the effects are going to be on local jurisdictions or not?
if you would like to have those addressed, we certainly can ask the person here today to step forward and give us a very brief summary of that. It may be self-explanatory in the letter as well.
Hi, my name is Sheila Tucker, and I am the Executive Director of your West Valley Clean Water Program, JPA, and mayor, members of the council. Thank you so much for asking me to be here tonight. I would like to say real briefly, I want to thank City Manager Leonardis as well as Ms. Ratcliffe for their leadership and support in putting this letter together and before you tonight. I also want to recognize Councilmember Mekachuk, who's on our board and has been very eager to get up to speed and very active on the board for us. So just real briefly, I know I wasn't asked to give a presentation, but I want to make it clear that if passed, this bill would radically change how stormwater is regulated in the state of California. And what I mean by that is that your permit to discharge stormwater into local waterways is based on a control measures approach or a best management practices approach. In large part, that's because stormwater comes from so many diffuse sources. You just can't pinpoint it like you can with sanitary sewer and trace it back to a single source. So if we have a number of control measure plans in place to prevent stormwater pollution, and if you do so, if you implement these plans and you do these best management practices, you are deemed in compliance. And what will happen if this bill is passed is by 2030, if you have any water quality impairment issues, if you have any non-swimmable fishable waterways, you will be subject to huge fines and violations. And in essence, it's anticipated that revenue would go into a fund. And then ultimately the water board would tell you then exactly what you had to do to control what is oftentimes uncontrollable sources. So we really appreciate your support in opposing this bill. Every municipality across the state is actively legislating in opposition of this, or I'm sorry, advocating in opposition of this. And we really appreciate your support.
Great, thank you. And yeah, this is something that several council members have been working on and paying attention to. This came before the West Valley Mayors and Managers Association, and from that was then brought forward as an important item to really look for the local control, and again, local control over state control on this, as Ms. Lawler pointed out.
Thank you for that.
All right. Do we have any further questions? If not, do we have a motion to authorize the letter as drafted?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lawler with the second by Councilmember Makachuk. Councilmember Turner,
Yes.
Councilmember Makachuk,
Aye.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bilahi,
Yes.
Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. Moving to the second item of new business, this is consideration of local regulations to address gun storage. And do we have a staff report or any presentation on this, Mr. Leonardis?
Thank you, Mayor Luthold. This item was requested by two members, at least of our council, who desired to have this put on the agenda. And Mr. Rudin can deliver our staff report this evening or answer questions about the process moving forward should council decide to move forward with a ordinance.
So yeah, at the request of the city manager, I looked into sort of what the city's options might be with respect to enacting local gun regulations. In most other states, outside of California, local governments don't tend to have the authority to make any sort of gun regulations. But in California, there are a number of local jurisdictions that have passed ordinances regulating, local gun dealers, which it doesn't sound like the city has, because we don't really have a commercial district. But also, regulating, gun storage within homes, imposing reporting requirements that are stricter than state law for stolen firearms. And, there's a number of jurisdictions within the Bay Area alone that have adopted these types of ordinances. So there's, a number of examples to choose from. The unincorporated areas of Santa Clara County are subject to these types of regulations, as are, San Jose, Saratoga. So the question ultimately is, does the city council want to move forward with adopting this type of local regulation? And if so, does it want to follow the examples of Saratoga and Santa Clara County, or maybe follow the example of San Jose, which only imposes a requirement for safe storage when the owner is not home? The county and Saratoga have regulations that basically require safe storage when the firearm is not in reach of the adult owner. And then additionally, the other question is, if the council wants to move forward, does it want to impose a shorter reporting requirement so that, if a firearm is stolen in Monte Sereno, basically the police department has to be notified within a shorter period. So I look forward to your discussion and direction on this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any questions before we open public comment? Any clarifying questions that anyone has they'd like to direct this? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and open public comment. Seeing none at this time, if there are any members of the public wishing to speak on this issue, please raise your hand and we will get to you in the order you raise your hands. So we will, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we will begin with Kelly Traver.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. So my name is Kelly Traver. I'm a mother, physician, and member of Silicon Valley Gun Violence Prevention and Moms Demand Action. We support the Second Amendment, but believe there are common sense laws that are necessary to keep the public safe. We request that you please adopt a safe storage ordinance, as other towns have done, which would require all firearms in a residence be securely stored in a locked container or disabled with a trigger lock. One small child dies every day in this country after finding an unsecured firearm. 2 older children, particularly teens, die every day in this country by suicide from an unsecured firearm. In addition, 80% of all school mass shootings are done by current or former students using an unsecured firearm obtained from their own home or a relative's home. A safe storage ordinance has become more urgent than ever during COVID, given the dramatic rise in gun sales combined with more time spent sheltering at home and the increase in mental health issues. We've seen a shocking 43% increase in unintentional deaths of small children and a 9% increase in teen suicides. Now, many cities and towns up and down California, particularly in San Mateo and Santa Clara, have already adopted safe storage. We hope you will do the same. When considering the penalty for violating the safe storage ordinance, we suggest a fine or community service. We recognize that most firearm owners are law-abiding and will simply follow the law if there is a law in place. We feel having this ordinance on the books will ultimately help to change our culture, much like the seatbelt law did in the 1980s. This is not about taking guns away, and we are not even anti-Second Amendment. We are simply asking for public safety. Now, some gun proponents will say it's unconstitutional, and this is absolutely wrong. First, let me say that when the Supreme Court in 2010 upheld the Second Amendment, Justice Anthony Scalia, who wrote the majority opinion, declared that by no means does this mean that guns cannot be regulated. You can't have a gun by anyone, anytime, anywhere. There can be, and there are regulations. Second, safe storage was challenged in the courts by the NRA a few years ago, and they lost. They lost more than once. It reached the 9th District and was upheld. It is constitutional. Threatening litigation is a tactic consistently used to bully when it comes to even the most common sense gun legislation. Gun owners will say it takes too long to get the gun out of a safe. That's ridiculous. It takes seconds to get the gun out of a safe. And also, if a person is feeling at that moment in time threatened at home, they can actually carry the firearm on their person. They don't have to keep it in a locked. Gun proponents will say that no one can tell them what to do behind closed doors in their own home, or that it can't be enforced inside their own homes. And that is blatantly false. There are plenty of things that you cannot do behind closed doors, like murder, molest children, assault others, etc. They may say that.
Ms. Trevor, thank you. Your time is up.
I actually don't think 3 minutes are up.
It is. It's 3 minutes and 29 seconds. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. I'm a physician.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Okay, next up will be Louis Pandula, followed by Temple Emmanuel, and then we have Karen Pandula. So Louis, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Council member, thank you for allowing me to speak. I would like to share some very startling and important facts with you. Storing firearms in a securely locked container can prevent unintentional child deaths and teen gun suicide by as much as 85%. Of the 150 school shootings since Columbine, having firearms securely stored would have prevented 2/3 of them. Storing firearms in a securely locked container can also prevent guns from being easily stolen in a home robbery. And the fee can be small to purchase a safe. A DOJ-approved safe storage device can be obtained for as little as $40, so the cost is not at all prohibitive, and trigger locks are often given out free at police stations. Many people are under the impression that the California Penal Code 25100 already addresses this issue, but it definitely does not. It does not define how to safely store a firearm, except if someone who is prohibited from firearms is living with you. And it doesn't apply to all homes. So parents often hide their guns, feeling that this makes them safe rather than locking up. But studies show 70% of children know the location of these hidden guns in their home, and many even have handled those guns. I respectfully request that you adopt an ordinance for safe storage of firearms in the home in Monte Sereno. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving now to Temple Emmanuel.
There we go. Hi, I'm so sorry. My name is Sharon Jengen. I was not able to change my name, unfortunately. I am a member of the Silicon Valley Gun Safety Alliance and also a member of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. 23,000 Americans die every year by gun suicide. It is truly the gun crisis facing our nation, and it can be stopped to a large degree by instituting safe storage ordinances. 1,200 teens and children die yearly, 64 people a day. One of those people was my beloved sister who died by gun suicide. Her gun was stored under her bed. Had the gun been locked up, my sister might be alive today, because statistics show that suicide is an impulsive act. Most people who survive suicide do not attempt it again. 2/3 of all gun deaths are gun suicide. 1/2 of all suicides occur with guns, but only 4% of attempts of suicide result in deaths, whereas 90% of attempts that involve a gun result in death. Again, I do believe my sister would be alive had that gun been stored safely. and locked. I really implore the city of Monte Sereno to adopt safe storage ordinance to help protect our teens, our children, and all people at risk of suicide. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Karen Pandula, will be followed by the person identified as Donald. Karen, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members, for the opportunity to speak. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Karen Pandula. I'm a member of the Silicon Valley Gun Violence Prevention Alliance. As a survivor of gun violence, I know firsthand the trauma and pain of losing a precious child to gun violence. The effect of our daughter's death on our family and friends is real and tangible. We will never be the same people we were before she was killed. After she was killed, I felt like my mind and my heart shattered into a million pieces, and I'm still in the slow process of putting the pieces back together. So please remember this. Behind every statistic of gun violence is a parent who has lost a precious child, or a child who has lost a loving parent, or a spouse who has lost a soulmate, a sibling who has lost a lifelong supporter, or a friend who has lost a confidant. If you're passing a safe storage ordinance saves just one life, then you have made all the difference in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Donald. You will be recognized and have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Number one, I think you should listen to your voters, not organizations who prepare speeches ahead of time. Penal Code 25100 was referenced earlier. The safe storage, the reality is safe storage is already in place. 25100 specifically talks about keeping a firearm on premise, when there is a child or someone who is considered, criminal or is not allowed to obtain that firearm to begin with. So that already covers the current resolution that's being proposed. The other thing that stood out to me was, we talk about gun homicides and we talk about suicides. I think it's a little bit disingenuous to conflate these two. Around 9,000 to 11,000 people die a year from gun homicides, and then another 30,000 people die from suicides. In other words, more people die from the flu every year than gun deaths, even if you account for suicide. The CDC recognizes that around 500,000 to 3 million defensive gun uses occur on an annual basis. In a time when violence is rising, I believe you are placing undue burden on individuals to protect themselves. Later on your agenda, you have a resolution to denounce crimes against Asians. I would like to remind everyone that during the 1992 LA riots, Asians took to the rooftops to defend themselves from an oncoming mob. We ought to tread lightly whenever we are faced with the decision to arbitrarily restrict a fundamental right. What if this decision places people at greater risk, not less? I would like to request you approach law enforcement and engage in discussion. As the people who would actually have to enforce this decision, you should involve their opinion on the matter. For example, how will you enforce this? You should react responsibly and mitigate the city's legal liability, not broaden our community to greater legal risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Pallavi Prasad. You will be recognized in a moment, and you may begin.
Hi, council members. I would like to speak on this issue. I think that, I thank you for this opportunity to talk on this. And I think that laws requiring safe storage help address the dangerous consequences of unauthorized access to firearms by minors and others who are ineligible to possess them. Safe storage laws will promote responsible gun owning practices. And I think that it is incumbent upon the, the elected members of the council to, ensure that we are adhering and following the rules and basically the policies that would help avoid any kind of prevent unauthorized users, including children, from accessing and using these firearms, which will reduce tragedies due to suicide, unintentional discharges, and gun theft. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. If any other members of the public wish to speak to this evening, please get your hands up so we can recognize you. Seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of the evening on this subject and turn this back to council discussion. Council members, anyone wish to speak to this issue? Councilmember Elahi.
Thank you. Yeah, this is an important issue, and it's not about the Second Amendment or gun rights. I think there was a lot of information given, and I really appreciate. I believe the name was Sharon and Karen sharing their personal stories. I mean, that's really hard to do, to come in and say, okay, this is what happened to my daughter, this is what happened to my sister, and it wouldn't have happened if just a little trigger lock costing maybe 30 or 40 bucks was in place. I think that's a better course to take. We don't have any information from the other side that somebody, because they had a storage box, they were able to not protect themselves. And I hope there isn't any incidents like that, because that would be very unfortunate. I think it's a very, very small step. And also, there is a state law, but it doesn't go far enough, obviously. That's why we're here. In any case, we're talking about having local control over issues, and this is one of the things that is our local control. It's Monte Sereno as to what we think is right for the citizens of Monte Sereno. And hopefully there's a lot of cities that have adopted it. Santa Clara County has adopted it, and that looks like a pretty good model to follow. And these are houses that are in the city, in the county zone, and not in any city, which may be an incentive for people to not belong to a city. So I think we need to seriously consider it. We're not asking for too much, just asking for guns to be put away when they could be accessible by minors and others, asking for a storage lock. The enforcement issue is an important one. Obviously, the city manager is not going to be going around. But the two things can happen. Obviously, a report can be made to the police and they can look into it. The second, more important from a claim point of view, if somebody does not obey the law and God forbid something happens, they're looking at personal liability for violating a statute, and I would hope that would make them obey the law and put guns in a safe place. So I would request this, the city, as a local level, take action on this particular bill. I think there are other bills that will be difficult, and we can't just ignore what's happening. And if we can cut down on gun violence or suicide prevention and fewer gun deaths, I think that helps the community, that that helps the Second Amendment, because it doesn't put that smudge or the bad name on for gun violence. I mean, if you have 15, 20,000 fewer deaths by guns, that makes people who carry guns gives them takes away that mark against them that carrying guns is a violent thing and shouldn't be done. So I think it protects gun owners in a way by being reasonable and responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Lawler.
Thanks. Yes, I completely agree with Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, and I want to thank everyone for coming to speak tonight, and mention that Dr. Traver had mentioned something about the increase in mental health issues, particularly because of COVID, as well as increase in gun sales. And as a mom, I never let my kids play at a friend's house if I knew that those families had guns, and that's even when my youngest, his best friend's dad was a police officer. So I am very interested in this. I don't think that the ask here, just asking for safe storage or a trigger lock, imposes a huge burden on anyone who is a gun owner and a responsible gun owner in our city. So I don't think that that would be an issue for anybody to comply with. And so I think that that's just a very logical ask to ensure that our kids and our teens, who are very resourceful in finding things such as Christmas presents, they're going to know where there's a gun and they're going to find it and they're going to play with it. So anything that we can do to make sure that if they do find it, they can't possibly get to it, that would save so many lives. And so I'm passionate about this. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Other council member comments? Mr. Mekachuk.
This strikes near and dear to my heart, and I would support moving forward with something of this.
Thank you. Any other council member comments? Ms. Turner.
Yes, as a member of this council, you know, I place the safety for citizens as one of my highest concerns. However, I have some concerns about these resolutions for the following reasons. And let me give you some of the reasons. We are not experts in this field. We don't know the full ramifications of what is being proposed here. I don't know what the impact is, as well as the best practices that we have. And what if this decision places people at greater risks, not less? I think we should consult with our police department and engage in discussions. As people, we should be as the people who would actually have to enforce this decision, $500 or $1,000 fines, I would like their opinion on this matter. Is that enforceable? Our local police may even have some data on the effectiveness of these kinds of laws, and I want to look at that. So are we protecting the community by really putting them or are we putting them at greater risk with this proposal? Do we really understand our own legal liabilities? And should we engage our residents on this matter? I think citizens' input is always important. One of the things that I would recommend is to consider these points and perhaps look at, you know, what are the potential lawsuits? Are there potential lawsuits? And even look at the resolution maybe from the state of California that they can give us guidance on. So those are my comments about this item here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Turner. So I'd just like to add that I think the people who spoke really convey some important information and are supported their positions with important data and facts regarding the impulsiveness of especially teen suicides. This is something that I've had experience with in my daughter's class going through Fisher and Los Gatos High. There were gun suicides in her year and people very close to her. And it was devastating for her, not as a family member, but simply as a friend. So anything that can increase the responsibility of gun handling and work to take away the impulsive act that especially the teenage boy, sometimes even teenage girls, will engage in is going to have a huge and meaningful effect on the lives of some of our friends and neighbors and family members. So from that side, I think the indications are certainly there that this is a good idea. And I think we're hearing that as well. But what Councilmember Turner brings up is important as well, which is to look at the expertise of those who have gone before us in the governments taking these actions. So I think we've seen, and our city attorney has looked at what is available in some of these surrounding communities. I think my feeling is reaching out to our own police department for some of their expertise and taking this to the next level of really finding the very best samples that are going to keep people safe. And so I'm all for safe storage and simply putting together the best and most supportable and least litigious approach to this as quickly as we can. So I think tonight it was on for discussion. It sounds like we have a quorum to take this forward, and I would say to take it forward quickly with these inputs tonight. Do we have comments from Mr. Rudin?
No, it sounds like the direction from the council is basically put together an ordinance. I would likely, in light of Councilmember Elahi's comments, that he thought that the county's ordinance was a good model, and I do generally agree with that assessment. I would likely base the provisions on those, and then I would consult with the police department to see if they have any additional concerns or suggestions to incorporate before bringing this back to council for introduction.
All right, sounds good. So I think we've got the direction that we need. This is something that there will be more opportunity for public input as well as the input of the police department. And Mr. Leonardis, if any coordination is needed, if you can make sure that the police chief and representatives are in touch with Mr. Rudin.
We sure will. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, turning to item 3 on new business. This is looking at adopting a resolution denouncing anti-Asian sentiment and violence against Asian American community members. Do we have a staff report regarding this?
Yes, just a kind of brief introduction of the item, Mayor. As was again requested by at least 2 members of our council in the past couple of weeks, this item was requested be put on the agenda, and due to rising events nationally as well as locally, we had some incidents last week, which is being investigated as a hate crime against Asian Americans. And as you know, there was a rally in Saratoga Saturday before last, which you were one of the co-hosts. We had all 5 mayors of the West Valley cities, as well as many other dignitaries. Our Congress member Anna Eshoo was there, as well as our state senator, Assembly member Evan Lowe, all attending this beautiful event, which was, I would call, very much filled with love. I would say most people are not haters, but in the unfortunate few circumstances that are out there, Monte Sereno has the opportunity to look at adopting this resolution. We based the language in the resolution on what was put forth by the Cities Association. The language at this point is up for discussion amongst council, and I believe we have either Chief DeSena with us on the line this evening, and or Captain Clint Tata here this evening, and they could answer questions regarding any local incidences that may have occurred. Although at the Los Gatos meeting tonight, they have the District Attorney Jeff Rosen there, who is discussing similar issues, hate crimes and such. So that concludes staff's comments. We are open for questions.
All right, we have a couple of hands up. We have Councilmember Turner, your hand is up.
Yes, as you can imagine, this is very near and dear to my heart. So I wanted to make a few comments here, and I hope you listen to what I have to say very carefully. I think we live in challenging times and uncertain times. You know, as a country, we are divided. The physical attacks, the verbal abuses, and the social media posts directed against Asian Americans and others show our division, directed against Asian Americans. And yes, it's often easier for many to hate and reject one another than it is to exercise inclusivity and compassion. There now seems to be an escalation towards Asian Americans. And it is my hope as members and residents that we will stand together to condemn this hatred and violence. Now, having said that, I think shunning an entire political philosophy and condemning the former president and the supporters is not the solution. That only deepens the divide rather than bringing us together. You know, of the registered voters, I don't know if you guys know this, 39% of the registered voters are actually Republicans and 45% are registered Democrats. So that's almost half and half. Last year, I was reelected by about 2/3 of our voters. That is probably the largest margin than we have had in our elections in many, many years. I would like to believe that the voters in Monte Sereno chose to stand with me despite the vitriol because of my no-nonsense attitude and the nonpartisan approach towards finding pragmatic solutions. So, as the only member of the council who is Filipino American, I urge us to unite against racism and bigotry. If we truly believe denouncing anti-American sentiment and violence against Filipinos, Chinese, Vietnamese, let us do so wholeheartedly under as large a banner as possible without playing partisan politics. Doing otherwise will only dilute our message. So I ask the council to strike the second whereas clause from our resolution. The cities of Palo Alto and Los Altos have similar resolution without this clause. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Malahi.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate Councilmember Turner's comments. I think this is a very important resolution. It's important to show the city stands for against anybody who has hate sentiments against any minority, and whether it be Asian Americans, African Americans, Muslims, Jews, or Christians. I will also agree with Councilmember Turner, as much as I may or may not agree with the second paragraph. I think we should vote in united on this one, and we should take that paragraph out, because it kind of strikes at a sentiment which is where it is, and people who believe in what that paragraph says will always believe in it. People who don't will not believe in it, but it doesn't help us as a city to take one side or the second side on the issue. So I will agree with Councilmember Turner on removing that particular paragraph. I don't know if you can wordsmith it in any way where it basically says that calling something a Chinese virus or a Kung flu is not appropriate. We may be able to come up with a different format without having to blame just the former president for that. And we are in a new age. I think there's a lot of awareness going on, awakening going on against hatred of the other, and the other has been through the ages, whether it starts with the Irish or with the Portuguese or with the African Americans and the Chinese and the Muslims and the Jews, and it's now back to the Chinese again. So hopefully we have an awakening in this country where we realize our strength is in loving each other, basically. And that's what Evan Lowe's message was, which was great at that Saratoga meeting, that we should be loving each other rather than hating, because that's how we can all work together. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council comments? We do need to open this up to public discussion. If we have any members of the public wishing to speak, please raise your hands. Meanwhile, we will go to Councilmember Lawler.
All right, thank you. I'm really glad that Councilmember Turner and Mayor Pro Tem Elahi had also agreed together on that second whereas. And my point is that we are a nonpartisan body, and our work product should reflect that. So I am in favor of striking that. However, I think that we can acknowledge, there's so much more we can acknowledge in this, right? we need to acknowledge that Asian hate crimes have been going on since they predate the Civil War. And we need to acknowledge something called the model minority myth, which is a harmful, false idea that is really at the root of a lot of Asian hate crimes. It's largely responsible. So we should have a couple of whereas paragraphs in the resolution that reflect that, because then that would adequately reflect what the community has been enduring for a very, very, very long time. And then on top of it, of course, the pandemic and the lockdowns and the loss of jobs, the anxiety, the panic, the distress have all contributed to this resentment and fostered this rhetoric that has been very damaging. So our resolution can reflect that as well. And so I also think that this resolution should compel us as a city to make a commitment to educating our community, encouraging our residents to share their stories. We're going to be building this community center. It would be a great place for us to have support groups. And if we can educate each other about each other's experiences, we have a better understanding, we can be empathetic, and we can recognize when it happens and we can stop it. So I'd like our resolution to have something that provides for that. And that is my comment for right now. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Let me officially open public comment, and seeing no hands raised, we do have a hand raised. All right. And if anyone else wishes to speak during public comment, please put your hands up and you will be recognized in order. First, we have Pallavi Prasad. You will be recognized and have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, council members, for this opportunity to speak on this issue. And thank you, Council Member Turner, for acknowledging, the issue that we are facing in this society today so eloquently. I think the only concern I have after listening to the council member comments is that, by striking the second clause, you are basically acknowledging that, yes, we have a problem without actually acknowledging why this problem exists. So I would really encourage the council members to kind of consider, instead of whitewashing, why we are facing this kind of a challenge, to also acknowledge why this pain exists, instead of just trying to be very, very political about it. That is my only comment here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further hands, we will close public comment and return this to council discussion at this time. Any further council member comments? I have some, but I want to let other people speak first. Council Member Elahi was a little bit quicker on his hand, and then we'll have Council Member Makachek. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, you're on mute.
On the second paragraph, I think we can add something which basically says, whereas United Nations report released last August, well, actually, let me rephrase it. I think whereas the use of the words Chinese virus and Kung flu are not appropriate to refer to the COVID-19, and leave it at that, so that we discourage use of those words by itself without referring to blaming somebody specifically for it. So I would suggest proposing some language along those lines.
Thank you. Councilmember Makachek.
Is probably one of the most recent Americans by citizenship. I like this resolution, and I think we've got to do something. And I would agree with Mayor Pro Tem Elahi. I would believe we don't need the words former President Donald Trump. I would prefer those words be struck, but the reference to the virus remain as noted by our member of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Lawler.
Yeah, I would suggest, I mean, that seems fine. And I would suggest perhaps in chronological order, place whereas we should include the part about this being some, the recent rise of violence against Asian Americans as part of a larger history of violence. Should we put that in chronological order, or is that in the right spot? And then can we add in whereas about the model minority myth? Do you think that would be helpful? Because I think that obviously is a huge part of it as well and should be recognized. So something along the lines of whereas the model minority myth is a harmful and false idea that largely contributes to the discrimination and violence against the AAPI community. Does that sound like something we can add? I think it's important we acknowledge that.
I think I agree that you stated that very well. I also like talking about that this is a historical problem which has increased dramatically recently. As I think we all know, Monte Sereno is in fact part of the problem. It was a city incorporated somewhat to discriminate based on economic reasons when race wasn't available to discriminate. I think we have that as part of our own history here in Monte Sereno that needs to continue to be recognized and dealt with. We still in our deeds have those provisions that have been struck about discrimination that are very ugly. But I think also what we're doing here today, what I was speaking about at the West Valley Mayors and Managers Rally last Saturday before last, is really important because this is a rising tide of anti-Asian sentiment and action against Asians that we do need to act on. So I like Councilmember Lawler's comments. I had some comments last week and I think these go to what Councilmember Turner said, which is this political division is at the heart of the problem, and we need to be careful that we don't try to blame one side and then draw a deeper wedge. We need to speak to everyone who's here. So I had a comment on that second whereas, or somewhere in those early whereases, to the effect of whereas political divisions, or whereas exacerbating and highlighting political divisions hurts and does not heal, that we need to unite against and to unite and speak up regarding the current increase in trend, and then maybe segue into the comment about the model minority myth and the use of inflammatory rhetoric as being specific wrongs that we can address. I also did like the comment that Councilmember Lawler had regarding a commitment to educate and support and to build bridges as a community and provide education for all members of our community, so that we have more of a call to action as well down towards the end. So that really would go in the be it resolved section, to commit to educate and support and grow as a community. Need to find a place to fit that in there if others agree.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
I guess I'm ignorant here. What is the model minority myth? Is that when somebody says, I hate you because you're a Republican?
No, you're not a minority yet, though.
What does that mean?
No, the model minority myth is that Asians particularly are smarter and harder working. And
we are.
That's not a myth. No, and that therefore that Asians can handle this and are deserving of being singled out for abuse and that are somehow different and not subject to being discriminated against. And that really leads to a lot of problems and a lot of pressures.
Got it. Thank you.
So do we have, I noticed that Ms. Aller has been taking good notes here. Are we going to try to put together a final version of this evening so that it's close enough and then we can fine tune it and publish it as a resolution rather than kicking it down to our next meeting?
Mr. Mayor, if I could make a suggestion.
Yes.
I've heard, of course, a lot of good information from all of you. And I think if each of you were to put your thoughts about a whereas or two and email it to me, staff would be able to consolidate those and add and subtract from the existing resolution and bring it back to council at our next meeting.
Yeah, and I think that probably will be the most measured way to make sure that we can address all issues here, try to put some real calls to action in, as well as making sure that we take out things that would divide people politically, yet recognize that it's the political and media environment that add fuel to this fire.
So may I suggest something? You know, each of the council members that have suggestions that they'd like to incorporate, you know, I would recommend that you state them here today rather than us, you know, emailing back and forth to try and craft a resolution for adoption, in part because I have concerns about, you know, the propriety of that with the Brown Act. But, you know, that being said, I think the council members have all had very good points this evening, and, you know, staff should be able to put all that feedback together into a revised resolution to bring back to the council for adoption on the consent calendar or similar.
Mr. Mayor, in response to what Mr. Rudin said, if council were to email me their thoughts individually, my idea would be to obviously not have council members emailing each other back and forth, not to have any collaboration, but to have heard what the other council members have said this evening and then put their own thoughts into words and send those to me. And this is just for ease of crafting the resolution. However, we can go about it with Mr. Rudin's suggestion as well, whichever you would prefer.
Yeah, Councilmember Elahi, you raised a hand, and then we'll come to.
I think we are almost there to finish this. I think Councilmember Lawler probably has her whereas. The whereas I would like to substitute for paragraph 2, I can read that. Whereas the United Nations report released in August correlated documented rise in attacks against Asian Americans, the use of inflammatory rhetoric, including referring to COVID-19 as a Chinese virus and Kung Flu, and just leave it at that. And that will substitute for paragraph 2.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
So
I would maybe just, I like that. I think maybe a United Nations report released last August correlated a documented rise in xenophobia and attacks against Asian Americans.
Okay.
Resulting in inflammatory rhetoric, including referring to COVID-19 publicly as the China virus and Kung Flu.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're done with paragraph 2. What other paragraphs do we need to add? I guess we have to add something Councilmember Lawler had in mind.
There was the whereas the model minority myth is a harmful and false idea that largely contributes to discrimination and violence against the AAPI community or Asian American community, however you want to, I guess that out of consistency, Asian American community.
Right.
And then also under whereas, like the third whereas is fine. The fourth whereas, the recent rise of violence against Asian America is part of a larger history of violence against minority communities predating the Civil War. Do you feel the need to say anything like that to give it a kind of a scope, or?
Sure.
No, I actually don't like that unless we're going to then talk about the fact that it's escalating.
Okay,
And I
okay.
think we've
part-
got that, and we don't
Part
want
of
to
a
put it back
longer
in.
history, part of a long history. How about that? Part of a long history.
Yeah, that's
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
that's already in there.
okay,
American is part of a larger history. It's already in there.
okay, then that's fine.
Anything else?
Okay.
Mayor and Council, I am sharing my screen with the resolution with the edits. If you can just take one last look to make sure I've captured everything.
I think one suggestion I would do is put the model minority whereas underneath, make that paragraph 4. There. Looks good.
I've got a question. This, Mayor Lufo, can I say something, please?
Yes, of course.
This whereas clause, despite a new presidential administration in office, what does that mean?
Yeah, I wasn't liking that one either, based on your comments about uniting and not dividing. And so I was looking at potentially striking despite a new presidential administration in office since 2021 and going directly to whereas incidents of hate crimes against Asian Americans have continued and escalated, including a recent surge in reported attacks.
Good, thank you.
Good job, Michelle.
Yeah, looks good. There's one more thing that if I may point out, in the now therefore it be resolved paragraph, is I'm uncomfortable with the seek out and punish those who commit hate crimes. Is that language seems, I don't know how we would do that. That just seems inflammatory. We're standing in solidarity. I think we say, was it, let's see, join us in condemning racist attacks against Asian Americans in all forms and renewing our commitment to speak out against such attacks, defend and protect those targeted, and educate our community, something along those lines, to stop violence. Against Asian Americans. And then delete the seek out and punish portion.
It's beyond stopping violence, so isn't it? Don't you always also want to include something about what people say?
Discrimination and or
Discrimination and violence.
All right, that's looks like it's integrated pretty much everybody's comments, and obviously the benefit of finishing this tonight is manifest both in making this handled in a timely manner, as well as resolving the issue and taking action. So
yeah, I just had one last comment on the last word. We're using Asian American throughout the document. The last word, last paragraph, I think had said API, AAPI. If you could change that to Asian Americans also, a little bit broader.
and I think there was I think the second paragraph wasn't quite what we had said. If we could share that again, I just wanted to take a look at that. So that should read, whereas the United Nations report released last August correlated to a documented rise in xenophobia.
Yeah.
And attacks against Asian American, xenophobia, comma, attacks against Asian Americans, and the use of inflammatory rhetoric, and the use of inflammatory rhetoric. There you go. Take out the word including, referring to COVID-19 publicly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
The last word here, Michelle, if you're going down.
We've got a couple of references to AAPI community, and so we've gone back and forth between AAPI community and Asian Americans.
So we just need to be consistent.
And probably AAPI is more of a term of art, which we haven't defined anywhere. We probably should just use Asian Americans throughout.
Right.
But we do have a definition there. Got it.
We can move that, I guess, in the title. We can include Asian American and Pacific Islander.
Yeah, let's put that in the title. I guess Asian American and Asian Pacific Islander, I guess is what they're doing. Or just Pacific Islander?
Asian American.
Inclusive, for sure.
Asian American and Pacific Islander, then comma, then parentheses, AAPI.
Yeah, that's good.
And then you can refer to it as AAPI throughout.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll make that change.
All right.
Excellent.
Great.
All right. Do we have a motion?
To adopt.
I'll second.
Sorry, that was a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Elahi with a second by Councilmember Lawler. Councilmember Nekacek.
Aye.
Councilmember Turner.
Yes.
Councilmember Lawler.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elahi.
Yes.
And Mayor Luthold.
Yes.
That motion passes 5-0.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Turning now to committee and commission reports. Do we have any council members with committee and commission reports? All right, seeing none, we will move on to general council member comments. And we've got a hand up by council member Elahi, I believe. No, it's back down now. I do have a comment, and that is we have received a request from the Muslim community to include in either this meeting or next meeting a formal proclamation or at least acknowledgement of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, which begins on April 12th. So this is something I did want to, in our spirit of inclusivity, make sure to acknowledge here before April 12th that will be the beginning of the Muslim holy month. We did miss the opportunity to recognize the Indian Holi festival, as well as Easter that has just passed. So I think in the spirit of the springtime important events for the various religions, I just wanted to make that comment generally and specifically. Councilmember Elahi. You're on mute. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, did you have your hand up and want to talk? You'll have to unmute yourself.
One more time. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Luthor. I think it is really important. We should recognize everybody's holidays. I mean, that's what makes us a great nation, the diversity that we have here. In the spirit of Easter, I also want to recognize our city manager, Mr. Leonardis, who was a great Easter bunny, I hear, this Sunday. And he's going to be sharing photographs with us at some point, hopefully. And we look forward to receiving those. The month of Ramadan, basically starting on April 12th, it's a 30-day time period in which Muslims fast from sunrise to sunset. So that's from about 5:30 to 7:30 almost. And it may go up. So it's like 13 hours, no food, no drinks, no cussing, or anything like that. They're supposed to be doing a lot of charitable work. There is a Islamic center in Los Gatos, which is a very large center that started last year. So they're almost a part of our community now. And what I would request, if appropriate, is for council members on their own, maybe post their the message that was in that email, and that's part of the agenda on any social media that they're part of, so that it looks like, you know, it's coming from you as a council member or from Mayor Luthor as a mayor. That's what I would request. I hope that's okay with Mr. Rudin. That's not a Brown Act issue.
No, that shouldn't be. You know, certainly council members can entertain taking actions, you know, on their own.
Great, thank you.
All right, and Councilmember Mekachek, you had a hand up earlier.
Yes, I was going to also compliment our city manager on being a great Easter bunny and making some people smile, which was good. And then going to the second point, can we have our presence on social media through the city acknowledge the beginning of Ramadan?
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond.
Yes, please.
So that was what the original request was in the email that was received by, I believe, all of you. And that should not be an issue should the council have no objections to that. We can post it on our social media, our Instagram, our news feed, on our website, and potentially next door as well, as the council wishes.
Yeah, I think this is something that I think the spirit of inclusivity is important here, and that if we're beginning, first of all, we're addressing the Asian American hate issue. We're talking about Ramadan. I think we maybe want to make a concerted effort to carry this forward and recognize our various communities as they bring to our attention and help educate us as a larger community on what is important in the religious or cultural traditions that are here in Monte Sereno. So I think this is a great way to start that, and also to let everyone else know that there's no picking of favorites here by the city. This is an inclusivity thing for everyone. Mr. Mekachek.
My final comment for the evening, I was going to put it in with the presentation by the Red Cross by Ken, but I will be giving blood in the next 90 days. I still have to get my second dose of Pfizer, and then after 14 days after that, at least I'll then do my best to give blood. So I would encourage the other council members and our residents to do so.
Great, thank you. And we've talked about this, I believe, before, which is certainly if the Red Cross is seeking blood, if any of the blood mobiles can come locally, and we can put that out on the call on the city, I think our residents are all certainly willing to get involved, but obviously it needs to be convenient for people as much as possible. And Ms. Turner, you have a hand up. And you're on mute still. Councilmember Turner, you're still on mute.
I wanted to make a comment about the Wimberley Walkway. I have visited the Wimberley Walkway probably every other week with Mayor Jack Lucas. We take our walks down there. And I wanted to say that Steve Leonardes has done a good job fixing that pathway up there, and it's amazing. You guys should go look at the American flag that is on the wall. So thank you so much for your efforts.
Great, thank you. And I haven't been in a while, but it looks, last I saw, there were more and more things going up there, and it does look like we should all be visiting on a regular basis to watch the change as it occurs there. Mayor Pro Tem Elahi, your hand is up.
Yeah, just a comment or a question, I guess. It looks like a lot of people are getting vaccinated, and if that April date for everybody to be able to get vaccinated comes through, we may be able to do our picnic in the park. I don't know how the plans are coming on that, but it sounds like that might work out after all. Mr. Leonardes, any thoughts?
It's looking possible, and I think Mr. Leonardes and Ms. Radcliffe are on top of watching for that, right?
That is correct, Mayor. As soon as we get the shelter in place, you know, if we get into the correct tier where enough different family units could come together, because there are these different tiers, as you know, and I think they're allowing up to 100 people outdoors, but it just depends on the amount of different families that could be participating in that 100. So I believe that's happening on the 15th of April. But we will keep council definitely informed, and we're hoping by the time we send out our invitations, which should be early July, that we will be able to have that picnic in the park. The county has not opened up the reservation systems yet for that location that we prefer, but Ms. Radcliffe is definitely on top of that. As soon as we're able to book that location, we will be doing so and moving forward with the picnic.
Great. And anything further? Otherwise, I think we do still have a city manager's report potentially here.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one thing. Well, first of all, thank you for the comments on the Easter Bunny. We had about 400 kids, and it was a beautiful event. It was a love event. If anybody wants to see the real love and diversity of our community being celebrated, go to see the Billy Jones Railroad on a Saturday, or Oak Meadow Park, or Vasona Park. And it's a great thing. Regarding the Wimberley Walkway, thank you on that. We hope to get up there with the tree service and do some deadwooding and continue to improve it. The neighbors get, you know, the gallery, the neighbors who have been contributing to the artwork, they get all the credit for the things that they've put on the fence. It's good, clean fun. It's a joy to see what they've done over there. And we just want to keep what we have there very well kept, because Monte Sereno does not have very much park or open space. And the idea of the Wimberley Walkway is to cherish what we have. And tomorrow will be the first day that the city opens up our new front counter. So for about 30 some odd years, the counter has been the front door facing Highway 9. However, now the counter front door, when residents come or others come for city services, they will come into what is our back door, but it will be our new front door. You can pull up in the parking lot and go right in. We will be sending out a formal announcement about this. It is still a little bit of a work in progress, but we should be fully operational there tomorrow morning. The gals have moved their stuff up to the front, and they will be greeting the public in that location. And that is my report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now we move to future agenda items. Anyone have anything that we have not covered yet that you'd like to bring up for future agendas? Councilmember Turner.
Yes, I'd like to bring up 2 points. We've had 2 citizens come up and we haven't really done anything. They voiced some of their concerns, and I wanted to make sure that we agendize them. One is Michelle Walsh, and the other one is Amir Hadid, the one that just talked at the first part of our meeting. So if we can have those on our future agenda items, I sure would appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. I think Mr. Leonardis is going to attempt to address those issues and report back to us if they've been resolved. If they haven't been resolved, then they should come up for some discussion about what we should be doing about that.
Yes, and thank you, Mayor. We have worked with Michelle Walsh and her husband on the concerns that she has had on her at the end of her street there. And staff did go out extensively and review the project and address all the items on her list. There is one small issue outstanding, which is resolution of the trees, which Ms. Hamilton provided me information on today. So that project is in full compliance with the city at this point. And I will be reporting to Ms. Walsh on that. Regarding the Hadids who spoke earlier this evening, their issue has also been looked into by staff quite extensively. And it's one of those other agency type of issues. I believe there is an easement that is on their property. PG&E has the right to access their property and install facilities. And PG&E was installing increased cable capacity for neighboring properties, and they added I guess you would call it a branch to the utility pole. And aesthetically, the Hadids did not approve of this, although the poles and cables and everything had been installed already. And then they had raised their concerns with the city and said, what can the city do? The city has reached out, staff has reached out to PG&E, our government affairs folks, and we are in communications with them. I'm not sure there's much that we can do, but we will continue to keep the dialogue open to see what can possibly be done to alleviate their concerns. And if needed, then these items or other similar items could be brought forward as agenda items, but these are more or less service issues that staff is on top of at the current time, doing all we can.
All right, thank you. Anyone else with future agenda item issues they want to bring up tonight? Seeing none, we will now adjourn the meeting of the Monte Sereno City Council. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.